Hey guys, welcome to Book Review 158. Today I am going to be reviewing A Matter of Rats, a short biography of Patna by Amitava Kumar. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. Okay, so this slim volume is about the city of Patna, a city in northeast India, kind of a little north of Bengal, north of Calcutta. And the book is, as I mentioned, it's a short book, so it's really split into a number of chapters that are just kind of reviews of the city. So we'll just get right into it. First chapter is A Rat's Guide, and this is essentially about the role that rats play within the city, you know, the title of the book. So there's sort of like something you feel in everyday life. And kind of the odd comparison that the author made was to New York City, and how in New York City people just have this fascination with rats and what they do and all that. But even more so in Patna, it's a part of everyday life because obviously it's much more poor. People have to interact with the rats, if you will. The author tells of when he was a young child. His family was watching TV, and for the length of the program, it's when the author's young child, he noticed these two things that were behind the TV that were kind of had, you know, reddish or whatever in their eyes. And the father didn't notice it, and it turned out it was two giant rats. And that was just vividly stuck in the author's brain. Not that he didn't have or any other interaction with rats, but it just kind of was what it was. Rats are very interesting in that they're complete survivors. You know, they can swim for, I think it's like, or tread water for 3 days, swim like 5 miles, don't have to sleep for like 2 weeks at a time, I think. They have teeth that have to gnaw constantly, otherwise the teeth will go up through their brain. So they're just constantly like gnawing on stuff. They're really, despite the fact that they're quite disgusting, they're very interesting creatures, and they're something that people in Patna have to deal with on an everyday basis. Now the author, the second part of the first chapter, goes out to the countryside where people eat rats for nutrition. Now, admittingly, these aren't city rats. These are often field rats. But the lowly caste, I think he calls them the Thai or something like that. I should know what that is. Oh no, those are the lowest class. This other class starts with an M. But anyway, they're known for eating rats, and to them, it's just sort of like an everyday part of life. And they kind of went and showed him how this caste catches rats, and it's essentially what they do is they build a trench, and then it's pretty much like gigging for a fish in that you just kind of stick your hand down there and get the rat and get it before it can bite you in the arm, which it sometimes does, and then you pull it out and you have a meal. So that's the first chapter. The second chapter, Pada Li Putra. That is the ancient name for Patna. Now, something about Patna is it's kind of a city that has declined. It's a city that has seen better days. It's also a city that has a tremendous past. It was the capital of, I think, the first unified state of India. Now, this didn't include southern India, but included the entire Ganges plain and the Decca, I believe it's called, plateau, extending all the way from Bengal in the east to Taxila in what is now modern-day Pakistan. It talks about some of the woes of the leaders during this time period. It talks about that I think his name was Ayakosha, was one of the leaders, as well as Ganjarat. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I'm pretty sure his name was Ganjarat. But anyway, what was interesting was that, there wasn't just, Oh no. It wasn't Gandhara. Let me get this straight. His name was uh, Chandragupta. Now there were three Chandraguptas. There was Chandragupta the first. No, there was Chandragupta Maryari that essentially unified the empire, and then Ayakosha kind of was at the head of the empire. This is around the time of the Buddha, and then I think the empire went into decline a little bit, but it saw sort of a second renaissance under what do they say? Chandragupta the first and Chandragupta the second. Chandragupta the first being different than Chandragupta Maurya. And they saw another spread of civilization, and essentially, you often hear about the Mughals or kind of the greatness of Delhi, but really that's more modern times. And this is really sort of like the ancient capital of India. As I mentioned, its greatest, among other cultural effects, but probably the best known cultural and religious influence was the fact that it spread Buddhism, and it was really the first Buddhist state, and was contemporary with the time of Sierramagata the Buddha. Okay, third chapter. So that's kind of gives like a historical background of Patna. Third chapter is Patna in whole. This is Patna's view from outsiders, be they Indians that come into Patna or even people overseas. V.S. Nepal's brother, who I can't remember his first name. It was like Sandra Nepal or something, Naipal. Are very famous travel writers, and the brother gave essentially a thumbs down review of Patna, saying that it essentially didn't provide anything anymore and was just kind of the armpit of India. Big part of this book is kind of self-deprecation of what Patna is, but also shows kind of from the lower class what they really provide for the city, and how it is vital in many ways. The second known famous person that visited Patna was Marlon Brando, and Marlon Brando was there for a few months as part of a World Food Program initiative, I think in like the late 60s, I think 67 maybe, when there was a huge food shortage in India, and he went in, and it was kind of classic Marlon Brando in that you could tell he was a presence, but he didn't make his presence known. Like there was this sort of aura around him, but he didn't say, "Hey, I'm Marlon Brando." It's kind of like it's this guy that has this presence. And also, he didn't travel with any bodyguards. I think for the most part, maybe he had like a couple Indian bodyguards, but was very much like among the people during that time period. Okay, so the next three chapters kind of cover Patna from the sense of people that have lived there. The first chapter being Leftover Patna, which is about people that have left Patna and established themselves elsewhere. There's Other Patnas, which is about people that have become successful in Patna. And then Emperor of the World, which is people that have moved into Patna, and specifically had people that have moved into Patna for social causes. Specifically Indians that have moved into Patna for social causes. Leftover Patna, that talks about some of the authors that have been successful going to Delhi, and then their attitudes towards the cities coming back, including the author's own view. Other Patnas, this chapter really focused on, I can't remember what his name is, but a certain individual. Let's see if I can't find it. Umbadi Sami, I believe. Jeez, I messed it up. Yeah, no, it's Anand. Something Anand. But anyway, what he did is he was super smart, but couldn't get enough money to go to Cambridge. Obviously got all the good grades and was recognized, but couldn't get the funds to essentially move out of the city. So what he did is he invested in sort of these educational centers within Patna. And what they really were sort of like quick hit educational centers where people could get a skill learned quickly, but not a fly-by-night scheme. It was definitely a skill they could learn, and then translate that into the workforce fairly quickly. This being interesting because there are a lot of schemes and kind of learn English, better type schemes that really weren't as genuine as they should be. Yeah, so that's kind of just the example that the author gave of successful people in Patna. Then there's Emperor of the World, which is about, let's see, people that move into Patna and, doctors and, I'm having a little trouble remembering. Oh, social activists like this Chaumbey that are really vocal there. Political activists, leftists, and kind of just talks about. It also talks about sort of the cultural scene there and how it's used to be really thriving and kind of has declined somewhat. But yeah, there's just a lot of kind of talk about this is like the, I don't know, Amnesty International. I mean, not that Amnesty International probably is there, and it's not necessarily about Amnesty International, but it's about like Amnesty International, ACLU, just as a means of comparison class of what exists in Patna, which is obviously probably a larger percent of the society because the society is largely stressed so that they need a lot of social activism and social justice in order to, attempt to correct the wrongs of the past. Then there's emotional. This is the last chapter. Emotional Adichar, which is about an author and his wife that went through a divorce in Patna. The author being a famous lyricist, a famous poet, and his wife, and kind of the truth of their two individual circumstances versus the lies as they divorce sort of a little bit within the public eye and really is kind of a reflection of the people in Patna in terms of they kind of went through what would be considered like a modern divorce and how people accepted that in traditional culture versus, the changing society that they currently live in. Okay. So, A Matter of Rats, a short biography of Patna by Amitava Kumar. Check out you guys. Good book. All right. Bye.